Now, a lot of you guys have been asking for support on the mental aspect of Rocket League, both in our public Discord as well as the comments under our videos. And today, to help us gain a far better expertise on this topic, we have LBP joining us for a conversation around performance mentality at both the top level of sports and gaming. LBP has been working with the best OC Rocket League teams for the last 4 years, most notably with Renegades, as well as more recently with the Chiefs, and he boasts multiple regional championships, as well as helping his teams achieve solid international placements through 6 majors and 2 World Championship tournaments. He has a bachelor's degree in sport and exercise science, a postgrad qualification in sports psychology rehab, experience with working in professional rugby, as well as experience in other esports titles like CSGO, Apex, and Valorant during his time at Renegades. Let's jump into the conversation and cover all the topics to help you guys get the most out of yourself in your journey to the next rank.
Hey guys, welcome to the Next Rank YouTube channel, and actually welcome to, well, what we're thinking might be the Next Rank podcast. We're not sure yet, but this could be the first of a podcast series. Something a little bit different than what we've had in the YouTube channel before. Myself and Jack are going to be talking to LBP, who is a coach for a Rocket League team in OCE. He's going to tell us all about that. But more importantly, mentality in Rocket League. LBP, you've got a background. Actually, it'll probably be better if you introduce your background, so I'll let you do that. But yeah, what is your background in mental coaching, and how did you get there?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's quite a while ago now. I think drawing back 7 years. I went to uni and did a bachelor in sport and exercise science. So really getting in depth with, I guess, the physical aspects of sports. I then worked in the industry in professional rugby for quite a while. But I was always passionate about the cognitive side of sports and professional sports as well, and I guess what it entails to be a professional athlete. So I went back to uni and I did a postgrad diploma in sports psychology rehab, which gave me quite a bit of an insight into all aspects of, visualization, of imagery, of competing at the high level, of dealing with pressure, dealing with threats, and understanding, I guess, what it's like at the high level. Which gave me quite a bit of an insight, which realistically translated pretty well into Rocket League. So I'm pretty lucky that I had that experience then, started my Rocket League career as well. But the sport and exercise science, and then, sports psych as well.
Do you want to give us a run through of your teams that you've been on in Rocket League over the past few years?
Yeah, so, backtracking now. Okay, so first started off with the infamous CJ.
Yeah, Renegades.
Stock standard. Right? Renegades. Very happy to have gotten that opportunity. Pretty of an interesting story, that one is, whereby at the time, Ground Zero had a sports psych or a sleep psych working with those boys, and CJ reached out to him. Unfortunately, they couldn't get that guy, and he's like, oh, what about this guy called LBP? So I jumped on with CJ, and I think at the time I had like 50, 60 hours in Rocket League, so not a lot. Okay. I'm literally like, boys, I cannot teach you how to play Rocket League, but I can teach you how to be the very best individual outside of the game, which will then translate to your in-game performance. And stock standard from CJ was like, all right, yeah, let's give it a crack. So I think I jumped in. On the Friday, and the regional was the Saturday, mind you. And then we won the regional. So it was sort of just
a good start then.
Good start.
Do you remember what season that was? Was that RLCS Season X during COVID, or was it?
It was right at the end of RLCS Season X.
Right. Okay, that's cool.
Right at the end.
Because I remember OCE RLCS Season X. That was pretty much just the Ground Zero Cringe Society Renegades days. There's the 3 teams who were all kind of battling for supremacy, but. Then the year after in 2021-22, that's when CJ's team Renegade started to do very well. I mean, I was always a bit surprised, not to turn this into talk about CJ, but yeah, I thought he was going to retire. I thought he was going to retire sooner. I was like, yeah, he's going to be a great caster. He's not top 2 every time in OCE anymore. He'll probably retire. Oh wait, he's winning again. Okay, how did that happen? But maybe you had something to do with that, prolonging his career, which I'm sure he's very happy about. We've got questions from our Discord later on all about, people wanting to know how to avoid getting tilted, and how to avoid, getting annoyed when they're not learning something as fast as they want to. But we'll get to that later. Sticking to the pro Rocket League aspect for now. What stuff have you encountered in Rocket League and in esports that's is there anything unique to it that there isn't really, a class or, something you've studied to help you with, and you're just like, okay, this is very different. This is new. I need to figure this thing out.
I think that's a good question. I think, geez, if they had CJ back in the textbooks, it would have been a little bit easier. But to be fair, he was, I guess, my first team on Renegades I was pretty lucky, to be honest, because I jumped into Pro Rocket League sort of not, right at the top, but amongst the top. So I didn't really build my way up through, some of the minor teams, and then I gradually make myself onto a top way team. So
right.
my first experiences in Rocket League in scrims was scrimming against the top team, so scrimming with the best. So in that sort of instance, I've only known, it's not like an ego thing, but I've only known to be amongst the top with the top boys.
Yeah.
So I think that within itself has been a pretty interesting adventure and journey, learning, I guess, the individualistic mindset that comes with pro players. Rocket League's an interesting one because you have 3 players, right? And I think if you have 2 players that get along on a team, there could be a potential for that outlier, that third player, to not really blend in or mesh well with the other 2, which might be a bit of a duo. Mm-hmm. Whereas you have other sports like CS where there's 5 people, so there's more flexibility in how the team environment is structured and how the team culture is sort of built, whereby you have individuals who are sort of meshing with each other. There might be a trio here, there might be a duo. It's a bit more mixed up, whereas in Rocket League, conflict, drama can arise pretty abruptly because, there's only really 3 people in a team. So I think that was the one thing that I was really surprised about, but was a sharp learning adventure when I first got into Rocket League, understanding that, hey, drama and conflict is something to not be scared or worried about, something to embrace. But it's just about figuring out how the individuals deal with that conflict and drama, which allows you to then sort of understand the workarounds, understand the fixes, and how we can sort of resolve it, I think.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the most interesting things that I've spoken to a few people about over the last few years, of like how Rocket League is a team of 3, and that makes it a very, very weird dynamic compared to, teams of 5, like you said, which is usually, I think, the nice kind of number, at least for esports. I imagine teams of 4 can be a little strange here and there, just judging from having 2 duos, for example. But teams of 3, it can get. You see teams blow up in Rocket League all the time. That's a very common thing, or teams not getting along. At least people might not see it publicly, but you hear of it very, very often at pro level. I'm just gonna jump ahead here. You said to me before we started this that you worked with pro rugby players at some point a few years ago. That's right. Yeah. Did you see any difference between how they act and how pro esports players act? Because obviously, you said you jumped right at the top with Rocket League with pro esports players. I just, obviously, I've been at the top. I am at the top in an esport. I still don't think I'm, as mentally strong as an athlete, for example. I don't think we have the same skill set in that regard. Like, what is the difference there? Is there any difference or not really?
I think esports players, to a certain degree, cognitively and from a mental perspective, do surpass physical athletes potentially in some categories. Really? I think it's interesting, right? Because we think of rugby or we think of any sort of sports, and they're long duration games, right? So, for example, rugby could be 80 minutes or whatever the subcategory rugby could be, right? Whereas Rocket League, it's 5-minute bursts. A series could be 20 minutes. It could be half an hour, depending on how the games go, right? So, to be able to really hyper focus and lock in from a mental perspective for 5 minutes and have to have, I guess, 100% focus, regardless of what's sort of happening in game. It's an individual perspective, right? I think that does have a bit more oomph to it, a bit more like, okay, a little bit more credibility towards it, because in traditional sports, there's a lot more downtime. There's a lot more time when you're in competition to have a breather, or just to reset, or just to like stroll around the pitch, for example. Whereas in Rocket League, you've got 20 seconds, 30 seconds in between games. You take a timeout, you get an extra little bit longer, but there's not that level or ability to sort of bounce back and reset, similar to traditional sports. Which I think esports players do have that bit more of an understanding and, I guess, situational awareness towards, for sure, I think.
Like how to immediately get over a bad result or how to immediately get over a bad game or make a quick on the fly change. Do you think that's just entirely out of necessity in Rocket League's case?
Yeah, I think especially if you make a mistake, right? Especially if you're the individual who, say, for example, creeps back post and all of a sudden it's a goal, right? Especially if you make that mistake, and then all of a sudden that blame could be on you. You might feel like, oh, that was all my fault. Why did I do that? It's not something I do usually. Is the pressure getting to me? What's sort of happening right now? And I think to be able to sort of accept it, understand it, process it, and then jump back into a next series, especially if it could be a game 7, for example, we're going all the way. I think that requires a really high level of understanding towards being able to bounce back and being able to control my emotions, have that sort of emotional regulation, you might say. It's definitely a strong suit for Rocket League players, I would say, for sure.
Definitely. I read something or heard something actually not too long ago for the first time. It was like the best athletes have a short-term memory or something like that. And it's really, it can be true in, of course, sports and just professional esports as well. It's like if you make a mistake, you just have to forget about it quickly. And also, if you have good results, you can take the confidence from them. Like we always tell people to do that from in ranked, which is what a lot of the people listening are trying to improve their game in. You take the confidence from good days, but you don't let it kind of control your ego almost. You don't let it control you too much. I mentioned some of the teams you've been on. You're now on Chiefs, and you've been with them for how long? For a couple of years?
Quite a while now. Yeah. This is second season with Chiefs.
Okay, a couple of years, yeah. You've been working with some younger players on that team compared to CJ. CJ was quite a an old player compared to a lot of people. He's like me now, and he now you're working with players like Hunter in the past, right? Who was quite young coming up. Not sure how old he is. Of course, don't want to you don't have to talk about specifically about players like that, but the younger players working with those versus the older players, is there much of a difference? Is that narrative kind of overplayed? From what people say, like how the older players have more experience and then they're gonna be more calm on the pitch. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, it's a great one. I think it's very, again, I'm always going to say this, but it's very individualistic, right? Hunter, for example, I guess one thing you have to sort of understand and realize is that if you are 16, 17, there's also a consideration for school, right?
Yep.
Whereas if some of the other players are 20, 21, 22, they don't have school, they might be on a full-time salary, so they can just purely focus on Rocket League, whereby if you've got exams and you've got to sort of circumnavigate that, study with exams and all that sort of stuff, but also getting off for scrims, getting off for replays, having all this other stuff you've got to focus about, it can get a lot. And it can create almost like a bit of a disconnect between players sometimes, because it's like, this player's late again, or this player's, he's so tired from doing 8 hours of school, but now he's got 2 hours of scrims. He's going to be okay. But I've sort of made sure to really facilitate an environment that's sort of structured around, sort of understanding what we're doing throughout the day and not really letting everything outside of Rocket League impact our in-game schedule. I think the golden example that I can really think of straight away, right? And I'm sure they wouldn't mind me saying it, but back on Renegades again, CJ and Kami were a duo, and Fever at the time was one of the youngest players. I think on a top 10, like 16 or 15 when he just joined. Okay. And that was a bit of a difference as well, because at the time it was about, okay, well, they're a bit older, they might have a bit more experience, but what does that sort of mean in game? So I think Fever felt like he had to take himself upon to be a bit more of a leader, to sort of understand, hey, I've got to step up here. But it's realistically about understanding what you're capable of doing, and then making sure you're not trying to just do more than you need to, and really just trying to, sort of find yourself within the team and not try and force anything you don't need to. So
did he need to be a leader gameplay-wise? I mean, I remember when he came on the team, he was like the best player, and they were kind of taking a gamble on him because at the time, OCE was very set with these are the top players, everybody else is struggling, and nobody can break through. There's like 3 top teams, and then everyone else. And then they kind of just grabbed this young mechanical player, and he was insane. He's really good. He still is. So, what kind of leadership roles did he have to take as a young player? What kind of things did he have to do? Maybe as well, what other what things did he do that people could, try to do, even in like more casual settings, ranked and competitions with their friends? Is there anything there that people can take away?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things sort of bouncing back to Thieves is that he was very replay dominant. And I guess this is a very double-edged sword in terms of you don't want to overanalyze, but you don't want to underanalyze as well. So really being observant of, I guess, individually, what are you doing? And sort of taking each game or each scrim, I guess, as a whole, and also breaking it down, right, in terms of different individual aspects in terms of what can I do better in this situation, and sort of could I have done anything differently? If I couldn't, okay, that's something I can accept. Let's look at something else. Okay, this is something I could have done differently. I'll remember that for next time. And sort of just taking that down and not really, I think a lot of players get so in the loop of just going over and over and over again. And they try and like brute force that mindset. Okay, this is all I've got to remember. But realistically, I think you just need to sort of have that sort of overview, accept it. Okay, this is what I'll take into the next series, or this is what I'll take into the next game, or this is what I'll take into the next scrim, for example, which is what Thieves did really well. He was able to sort of analyze different games and understand, okay, this is where we should have done stuff differently. That helped me at the time because I still, getting on now, probably had like 200 hours in Rocket League, so a little bit more, but not enough to really break down games and understand rotations, understand first, second, third man, different challenges, understand all that sort of complexity. So I think he really brought that towards the team. And then obviously adding on knowledge from CJ and Kami as well. So I think that was a really good winning combination.
I just wanted to add on because it's quite interesting how of course my personal kind of like journey's gone with playing and the mental side of it, because you mentioned how he brought that kind of what it sounds like openness to the team, to learn new things, to try new things, and to constantly try and push to get better. And I just remember my first kind of few months screwing with pro teams when I was coming up in the scene, and you're learning from game to game at that point when you're like a young player, a new player. You're learning from game to game, and you're constantly looking to improve things, not just for the next scrim, literally the next game. And almost I felt like as I've gotten just more experience with playing, and just better and with more results, you almost have to fight the urge, at least in my eyes, to like you want to fall back on what has always worked for you. And sometimes that can be a good thing in high pressure situations, but it can also be a bad thing in learning new things and trying to push yourself. And I've had to like completely kind of change the way I see the game or view other people's opinions about the game, for example, just to learn new things. Even this season, learning a ton of new things from my coach that I would have never even tried to do before. And it's just strange how that works, because a lot of players get stuck in ranked and whatnot because they actually get to a higher level. They have things that have worked for them in the past, and there is just a point where you stop pushing yourself to learn new things because you think you figured out what has worked for you. And I think that's a really dangerous mindset that younger players tend to not have for whatever reason. I don't know why. It's just they don't have that kind of mindset, and it's dangerous to have. So a lot of people watching this, I think, a massive thing to take away is that openness to always try and look for the next thing to improve on, rather than being stuck in what has always worked for you.
Yeah. Just to add on to that really briefly as well, I sort of reflect back when I was in Renegades. I also worked as head of performance, so I worked within 5 different games as well. So I worked in CS, Apex, in Valorant as well. So I got a bit of an understanding of different games and how those players function as well.
Interesting.
Especially in CS, I found that a lot of those players have the mindset that it even translates to Rocket League, but I'm at the top now because of everything I've done in the past. So why would I do anything different? Right? And having this sort of mindset that's a little bit closed, right? Whereby we should be open towards chasing the percents. I always look at chasing the percents whereby 1% might be sleep, 1% might be exercise, 1% might be hydration or nutrition. And all of a sudden you've got 4 or 5% on top of someone else who's not even considering those variables, right? So I think that we should always be chasing those extra percents. And if something doesn't work, great. Okay, we've tried it. We've accepted that, hey, this maybe isn't for me. This isn't something that I really enjoy or want to continue doing, but at least we've had a go. And I think that's the most important thing, to really just understand that, we have to learn, we have to understand, okay, if this is for me, great. If it's not, that's perfectly fine. But we have to be open towards different experiences.
I think that's the part that a lot of people in Rocket League, not just pro play, but a lot of, just casual gamers, might be lacking is the extra percentages and the like you mentioned, the sleep, hydration, exercise, vitamin D from sunlight. People joke about touch grass, but there might actually be something to that when it comes to gameplay, just maybe. But how difficult has that been in OCE actually? Well, first question, what time do OCE events start at during the day? What are RLCS events online? What's the start time?
So we start at 5 p.m. Usually warm up at 4 p.m. and then we start at 5 p.m.
That's like 1 hour later, or is that the same as EU, Jack? I think it's 1 hour later than EU. I think EU starts at 4 p.m. or is
that's
it 5
our time.
Friday?
It's five for most European countries.
It's 5 for
we're just like selfish. We just think that everyone like goes to our times, but no, we're now behind.
To be fair, Spain should be a different topic. Yeah, Spain are in the wrong time zone. What are they doing down there? Sort yourselves out. But so OCE, you guys must have a similar problem to Europe then, in that the events are starting so late that a lot of teams I've talked to, they want to practice, they want to scrim at the same time as the events start to get into that kind of flow of competing during these hours of the day, so that's when you're most switched on, which makes sense. But the problem with that then is that during the week when you're scrimming, you're now scrimming from 5 p.m. till 8 p.m., which is when most people, like their friends, their families, are just having dinner, doing something in real life. And then the hours during the day when everybody else is busy working or at school, you're just like twiddling your thumbs, sleeping, like, okay, well, what do I do? Maybe a bit of replay review, free play some Rocket League. But the social life can go out the window on this schedule where you're practicing 5 till 8 and then maybe streaming a little bit after on the weekdays, competing on the weekends. When does the social life come in? When can you get into that routine? And how have you been able to get your players to have those extra percentages while being on a very antisocial schedule?
It's tricky. It's very, very tricky. I've always it's hard.
You can't give up.
Sorry to cut you off. It's so hard to do that. Carry on. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I remember, I think it was a few years ago where it was funny. I took scrims off just to go out for my birthday, but I felt really guilty about that.
Yeah.
Just going out for dinner with family, and family was over.
Yeah.
But we had scrims. We had scrims from 5 till 7. We had replays afterwards, and I just felt guilty about that. And I think it definitely does wear you down. Yeah, I think about it now. It's 4 years of not really having a weekend from I guess 5 p.m. onwards.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's times outside of online regionals and stuff like that, but I guess within those set standards, it can definitely get tricky sometimes. Yeah, it's hard to sort of micromanage that.
It's really difficult. I mean, you said you felt guilty about taking some time off, even for your birthday. I mean, I think a lot of players struggle with that, and of course, we're mainly speaking about pro players in this, but I think even people watching this can sometimes, the ones who are really trying to improve, they spend a lot of time, and everyone sees that. We see that you spend a lot of time playing and trying to juggle everything else as well. But it's when you have that free time to play, but you're also doing something else, you're right, you feel guilty. It's one of the hardest things to fight against, and especially in a world like esports, because it is so easy for people to put in so many hours that you feel like you have to keep up, right? It's like everyone, because it's online, especially in pro play, everyone can put in however many hours they want to. There is burnout, of course, but there's nothing physically holding you back, and there's nothing there's no travel time. You literally travel into your computer in your room. You know what I mean? It's like you can stay on for however long you want and play for however long you want. So whenever you do take time off, you feel guilty. You feel like you're falling behind. And you feel like you're not deserving of your spot. I think a lot of players can feel like that. The social aspect of pro play is borderline impossible, and that's not even speaking about the natural pro players tend to be more antisocial than people in other kind of industries. So Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I think Johnny as well. I played in obviously in NA and EU, and the start time of NA is
much earlier,
like
right?
midday. Yeah, it's midday that for their time, and that was a lot nicer because you're playing midday tournament wise, and you're finishing by like 5 p.m. the latest. And you can actually have a good sleep schedule, and you actually have to have a good sleep schedule to wake up in time for the tournaments. Whereas EU, the amount of players that wake up at 3 p.m. and stuff in Europe is absolutely insane. Do you think that makes a difference to how they compete LBP and how successful they are? Like kind of sleep schedule. You talked about the kind of 1% hit things here and there. How important is that exactly, and what can people take away if they want to improve their schedule for as silly as it sounds, for playing well in ranked and things like that?
No, absolutely. Sleep's one of the biggest things. We always say sleep is like hitting the reset button for our brain, right? Being able to sort of recalibrate and refresh and take in a new day. And when you're on such a wired sleep schedule, but most importantly, when it's variant and when it's changing, one night you're going to bed at 5 a.m., the next night you're going to bed at 4 a.m. or it could be like 1 a.m., right? Really variant. That's when it can be really impacting because our brain doesn't know what's going on. Why are we having all these sort of external stimulus that's sort of keeping us awake? This didn't happen last time. So it's always hard to find ourselves in that sort of perfect balance. If you've got a bit of a wired sleep schedule, definitely one of the things I've always prompted and promoted, having an important sleep schedule, and just having a schedule in general is nice to have, to be able to wake up at the same time roughly and have a bit of a routine. You'll definitely find that you feel more open, you can think better, you can feel better on the game, and that's going to lead to better decision making, better judgment as a whole. Even at the very ground level, even in casual play, like being able to just feel better, right? So I think just really having a bit of an understanding towards what you're doing and pre-bed. The biggest thing, and I've been in a study previously as well here in OCU, and it looked at blue light impact prior to bed and prior to loading, I guess from a cognitive perspective, how much stimuli we're taking in. And it's definitely pretty impactful how much of a impact it can have, especially when we talk about melatonin levels and I guess changing everything to do with our circadian rhythm, all the impacts that I guess being on our phone and just death scrolling before bed can have an impact on our brain and just keep that stimuli going, keep our brain switched on even when we're sleeping. It can be pretty scary. So definitely having a bit of a consideration towards a proper sleep schedule is one of the things that's easy.
And is there, you said kind of about like screen time as well before you sleep, and is there like kind of a specific number of hours or however long before you're trying to sleep that you recommend people kind of stop playing their game and stuff like that?
Yeah, roughly about 30 to 40 minutes. I know it's hard because we all jump into bed and just scroll Twitter or scroll Instagram Reels or have a see what's going on. But realistically, roughly 30 minutes is one of the key things, key times to help us sort of give our brain a little bit of a debrief. It's nice to sort of potentially pick up a little bit of reading, like having a book. One of the things I've really prompted over the years for my players is before bed doing a bit of journaling and having a bit of a diary, just sort of recapping the day. How did things go well, especially if scrims didn't go well, right? Being able to write out on paper, hey, today just wasn't my day, whether it be an individual thing, whether it be a team thing, being able to sort of write down before bed and then close the book. That physical movement of closing the book, right, I've set that aside now. I'm going to leave that. Tomorrow's a new day. We'll start a new page, and it can be a new story for tomorrow.
It's that's an interesting thing because I've always had the opinion, I don't know if it's true for other people, but at least in my brain, that people tend to hold on to negative emotions a lot longer than they hold on to positive ones, right? That's always a very interesting thing because you'd think that there really is no difference, as in like if you have something that happens to you and it's really good, you'll take a lot of pride in that, you'll take a lot of emphasis from that and hold on to it, but you actually don't hold on to it as long as you hold on to something that happens that is really bad to you. So it's quite a cool point that you said about writing kind of those, especially the negative experiences down, closing the book and putting it behind you, kind of thing. That's what you're doing. You're putting that behind you, and it's allowing you to process it and allowing you to move on and focus on the next day and make it a bit better. So yeah, I have no other questions about it. I just thought that was quite interesting to hear that point. I definitely have to try it out myself.
Yeah, on that topic of the negatives and trying to process the negatives. Earlier you mentioned in Rocket League you have to do that very quickly, but still there are those bigger picture negatives which you kind of process, or pros will process out of the game, and more casual players will process at the end of their session by checking if they've gone up or down in MMR. So
right.
At the end of the rank session, you look at the plus minus, and that determines your opinion of the session for a lot of people. They're just like, if it's up, okay, good. If it's up, not as much as they wanted, could be better. If it's down, terrible. Waste of time. What on earth have I been doing for 3 hours? And we talk a lot on this channel about having different goals in MMR and having other targets so that you can tell yourself that, okay, this wasn't a total waste of time. But on that bigger picture, I wanted to ask. I remember I read somewhere recently, and I don't know if this is true or to what extent this is true, but I read somewhere recently that stressing out about something that hasn't happened yet, and reliving a bad memory of you had a bad session earlier in the day, you lost a lot, then later on in the day you're just like reliving that. You're going, oh man, if only this, if only that, we could have maybe won a couple more games, have been in the plus, or maybe if I just hit that shot, we could have won it. I read somewhere that your brain actually has a very hard time telling the difference between the real experience and the relived memory of the experience, or the imagination of a future to come. Oh man, I hope I don't freak out and make a mistake in this high pressure situation. Like, you're basically living it twice. You're going through that stress multiple times, sometimes even more than twice. And instead of just waiting for the actual moment, or like you said, closing the book on that moment and being more present. So what's how true is that? How much does that apply to Rocket League and to pro play?
Yeah, no, I've definitely experienced that, especially in situations like I mentioned earlier about games that we just lost in overtime, or hey, I did something wrong, or I did something wrong in game which I shouldn't have done. And there's a very good reflective imagery visualization technique that I've always used outside of the game with traditional sports, similarly with Rocket League players as well, which is called the reinventive corrective reflection. So what you're really doing is you're mentally replaying the task and imagining what you did, but then you're mentally replaying it again and imagining that task being done correctly, right? So you're sort of breaking it down step by step and really understanding what went wrong in what situation. And that allows you to differentiate, was something in my control? All right, could I have done something differently? Okay, let's break it down. Let's do it right. Okay, could be, I don't know if it's Rocket League specific, like going for an aerial, missing an open net, right? One of the biggest things, CJ, by the way, missing an open net in Rocket League. Just it's right there in front of you, but you just hit it top bins, and you just doesn't go in or something like that. Visually breaking down that situation and imagining the open net, and then imagining yourself scoring it properly, and imagining that successful response and that task being, I guess, executed correctly, is a really, really powerful visualization technique that I've used throughout the years now. But I guess as a whole, you have to really understand as well, if there's things out of your control, then there's things out of your control. You just have to try and find a way to accept that versus the things that are in your control and what you can directly have influence over as well.
The
RCR, reinventive corrective reflection.
Corrective
It's
reflection.
known by a few different words, but yeah, that's one of the ones that I've used. RCR.
Jack, I'll write that down for you to help with your open nets. There you go.
Thank
RCR.
you.
You can use that later
Johnny
on.
has actually written that down in our group chat, which is absolutely awesome. I can just see it pop up on my phone, which is fantastic. No, it's a really good point. Visualization in general is a really powerful tool that I personally work with someone and have done for a couple of years, and had other psychologists on former teams and stuff that come from sports and things like that, and they have always recommended visualization, and it to people that don't, because there's a lot of players and a lot of people in general that don't believe things like this can make a difference, I guess, right? They are very non-responsive to it, and they don't want to try it, I guess. I think it's really important to give things like this a try, no matter how stupid it sounds, because I've benefited a lot from before series going through what I want to happen in the series in my head off the kickoff, where I get the ball. What do I want to do with the ball? If there's a guy challenging me, what do I want to do with it? Do I fake it? Do I go high? Playing situations like that in your head can help you just understand what you want to do a little bit clearer and have a few goals in mind when you go into playing. And I think on the inverse, playing some situations in your head before the series of things that go wrong, and not necessarily to kind of make yourself panic from them because you don't want to do that. It's more so the opposite. How do you handle these situations when they happen? I've owned goals. I've made a bad mistake. What do you actually want to do? As in, not just respond on the pitch, but what do you want to look like in your seat? How do you want to respond? Do you want to make a big reaction and go like, that and head down in hands? Or do you want to make a quick, funny remark to your team? How you just own gold and you move on from it quickly. That's what you'd rather want to do, right? So I think visualization of those two things of what I've personally been taught before series and go through, at least this season. And it's really useful. I think people can benefit a lot from it in their own games. A bit of a tangent here, but Nick, coach for GK, I'm pretty sure he said a few. Nick on. I'm pretty sure he said a few times how Joyo, one of his players now and former players as well, he would go through kind of situations in his head of how to beat players with some weird plays. Like when he gets a reset, how can he take past? How can he air roll it past a player or two? I'm pretty sure he said that he does that. Players all the time do this, and they might not realize it, but that is a form of visualization that is helping them practice moments when they're not on the game. Again, another tangent, but I've always said in a few of my videos that one of the biggest things that you can do to improve is not just play the game a lot, but think about the game a lot outside of it. And I think that's it holds true until today and will, for future. So everyone can definitely take that into their own game.
So we will get to Discord questions in a bit. We'll talk a little bit about casual, I say casual, ranked, and how to play in more casual settings. But one thing I wanted to talk about with you, LBP, and Jack as well, is since we've now established that OCE and EU have got similar kind of struggles with the RLCS schedules when it happens, how important do you think it is, LBP, that, because I mentioned earlier, that a lot of teams I've talked to, they say we practice when we're going to play the same time of day. We want to scrim late because we play RLCS late. Do you think that actually matters? And as a follow-up to that, do you think it would be possible for like a core group of teams, if let's say all the big French teams in Europe plus Dignitas want to get involved in this, they all say, nah, we're going to start scrimming at lunchtime. We're going to have a normal work schedule. We're going to scrim it at 12 till 3, and then we're just going to have we're going to have more time in real life to do real life things and to work on those, chasing those extra percentages that they can't right now get because of the schedule conflicts. Do you think that would negatively impact the performance on weekends, having the practice at a totally different time of day? Or do you think the benefits would outweigh that potentially happening and applying to OCE as well, not just Europe?
It's a fine-edged sword, I would like to say, because on one hand you have the flexibility of, say for example, if you were scrimming at midday, you have the flexibility of enjoying your week, your night, and I guess you'd have more of a social life potentially. But then on the other hand, it wouldn't be directly in line with when you're playing, right? One of the biggest things that I always used to say is, because we're going to be playing at nighttime, just get used to going out and breathing the fresh, cold air, right? Especially if we're going into a game, into a grand final. Like prior to a grand final, just take 5 minutes, go out, look at the moon, get some nice fresh air in your system. If you weren't scrimming like that and they're at different times, you'd be looking at the sun, so it wouldn't be a direct reflective towards, I guess, the same environment we're practicing in. But I think, I don't know, it's tricky, because I think the flexibility of being able to enjoy your social life is a really, really big positive benefit. It's just a matter of whether that directly has an influence on your performance in game. It's a tricky one. What do you reckon, Jack?
I think you'd always it might not be as healthy for you as a person, but as a player, I do think that you would always rather be playing at the same time as you're competing. So you want your scrim times to be the exact same time, really, or similar times as your start of RLCS times and things like that. In North America, when I was playing in NA, we scrimmed at 1 to 3 p.m. usually, and our RLCS was like 12 to 5. So it's kind of in that time frame. In Europe, the scrim times are later. And I think that is mainly as well due to more players in North America were full-time. In Europe, there were and are less players that are full-time with Rocket League in the past seasons. And I think that does make a difference because obviously some players are still in school and stuff like that, and they can't scrim at 12, They have to wait until they're home at 5 and stuff like that to scrim. But it is also because of the later start time. There's no point for us to be scrimming at 12 when we are, competing at 5. And so I would always rather have that, because as important as a good social life can be for players, the majority of top tier players do not have a good social life. I'll tell you that much. So, it's like, from what I've seen, it's more important to be following a fairly strict, or not strict, but a fairly consistent schedule of when you're playing and when you're competing.
Yeah, I think just to add on real quickly, and it's a bit of a hindsight sort of tangent, but I think being adaptable is also a really important thing, because when you go to a major, when you go to Worlds, we're not playing at the same times where we would back home, right? So for example, at Birmingham recently, I think our first series was at 1 p.m. We've never played at 1 p.m.
Yeah.
Right? We did a few scrims at 1 p.m. knowing that, hey, we'd be playing at 1 p.m. But then on the same day, we were the first series and the last series. So we played at 1 p.m. We played at 8 p.m. So being adaptable is such an important thing as well at the pro level. But yeah, something that's not too... Yeah.
It is for sure. I actually have had a few LANs now where I'm playing my last match in the Swiss stage at like 11 p.m. And
crazy.
And I remember Copenhagen. I remember Copenhagen in particular a year ago where it was like we started the day. I'm going on a tangent, but we started the day off at 2-0 in Swiss, and we ended at 3-2. Luckily, we made it, but we had to play 3 series. It went on we were at the venue for about 11 hours in total from when we got there to when we left, and our last match was like 11 p.m. and you're very tired, but you're also not tired because you've got energy, like you've got adrenaline. So it's like parts of your body are tired, or maybe your eyes are tired, but you're not. It's really strange, and yeah, you have to be able to manage that. I actually think I don't know if you believe this too, but I at least have come across so many players in pro esports and pro Rocket League mainly, of course, that it brings about a certain type of person. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but we all like to follow schedules. It feels like we all like to be doing similar things each day and be consistent with how things work in our schedule, and we don't like things to be changed last minute. It feels like so. It's almost like we're not very adaptable people naturally, but you kind of have to learn to be, or have to deal with it. You just have to deal with it, I think, is the point. I don't think I'm a naturally quite adaptable person to schedules changing all the time and things like that, but you just have to learn to put up with it and deal with it and play well regardless, I guess.
Yeah. Again, just one of those things that's often out of our control. So.
Okay, so for the rest of this video, we're just going to jump into some questions from the Discord. If you haven't already, you can join the TNR Discord. Tons of people in there who have bought the course, and also a lot of people in there who haven't and are just trying to help each other get better at Rocket League, discussing plays, reviewing replays, playing games, looking for groups, etc. So feel free to join down below. These are some questions from the members of the course. Faraz first, not to be confused with Farah. This is Faraz, plural. Says, how to stop caring about MMR in ones and twos, but I think we can more widely apply this to just in general. How to stop caring about MMR, because it's one of the tips that people give a lot of the time in how to rank up is stop caring about MMR. But how do you actually do that in order to gain those benefits?
Yeah, it's a big phenomenon, especially among many other games. It's what we call ranked anxiety. It's like you've just won 5 games and I've gotten an extra however much MMR. I don't want to queue again now because I'm going to lose it, or I might lose it. So there's a level of anxiety to go back into the game and actually just play the game, because I've got to this rank now. I don't want to de-rank, or I don't want my friends to think I'm back at a lower rank or something like this. And there's this bit of a cognitive notion towards actually playing the game. So the biggest thing that I have is what I've worked with, I guess, individual auto players before previously, is take each game as a learning experience, whereby even if you just have like a Word document on your side of your monitor, you have game one, even if you lose the game, at the end of the game, write down something that you take from the game. It could be something big, it could be something small. And then at the end of your gaming session, you might have played 10 games. You might look and you think, oh, I've actually lost 5 MMR. But if you look on the other monitor, actually, I've got 10 or 12 really good positive notes on what I did well. Maybe it's some things I can work on, like, hey, I need to fix boost management. I'm just boosting as second, or I'm just boosting as first, whatever it might be, too much, or I need to work on my rotations. I'm taking long rotations instead of short, or I need to cut back in. Some of those small individual things, and all of a sudden, naturally, you're going to start getting a little bit better. You're not going to start, worrying about that, because it's like, hey, I'm going to jump into this next game. What can I learn? What can I actually what can I take away from this game?
Yeah, I completely agree. Ranked anxiety it's a weird one, and it's obviously a weird one because I think that people just naturally overthink these types of things. It's so scary to kind of jump in and play because you don't want to lose, but you're never going to get better if you don't play, right? So it's like it's a paradox that people come across. I think the one thing I will say is that I've always thought I've been very good. It sounds stupid to say. I've always thought I've been very good at losing in my career, not just professionally, but in when I was ranking up. And what I mean by that is that like people have to get better at losing in exactly like you just said, Lachlan, in taking the positives away from losses. I've always been extremely good at that. I've never taken losses too harshly on myself. I've never given up from it and stuff like that, and always just taking the positives from games that you lost in ranked. I've always been extremely good at doing, and I think that does make a difference. Setting your goals not too high. Johnny, the amount of times that we see personally in the Discord of I'm 1600, and how do I get to how do I push on to 2K MR and then pro play? I'm like, oh, hang on, let's get to 1700 first, right? And maybe even not that, but let's get to 1650, right? It's like you have to set your goal really low. And I think people actually set their goal too high. I don't know if you agree with that, Lachlan. I think that is a thing that they can do. And it almost, it's too far away. It's not manageable. And it's not, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not measurable. You can't measure how close you're getting to a goal that is just like years in advance, years away from you. You have to keep it very, very short-sighted. And I think that's one thing I did very well going through the ranks. And like I said earlier, losing well. I was always very good at taking away from losses, exactly like Lachlan had just explained.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a really quick little analogy that I might quickly squeeze in, which I think is really nice. I always view goals, and I think being a journey, like a train. If you imagine a train, the end destination might be the final train station where it arrives, but it can't just jump there without going through small train stations and refueling, or picking up extra passengers, or having a little bit of a stop along the way. So as long as the train is on the tracks and it's moving towards its destination, there is progress, and there is a bit of a journey that we can enjoy.
Absolutely, and you might go sideways. You're not always going straight forward to exactly to where your end destination is. That's very cool. I like that.
All right, so next question here is from Raybot Demian. Sorry if I said your name wrong. But he says he's always found it harder to play against a team that he's just lost to, especially if it's a big loss by 4 or 5 goals. How do you bounce back from that so it doesn't mess with you for the next game? So this is something that happens a lot in pro play, of course. Yeah, what things are there in pro play related to this that we can maybe take away for ranked, competitive, smaller tournaments? Yeah,
absolutely. I think the biggest thing that I usually tell players is that you can't let the previous game's performance impact the next game's performance. You have to really individually, I guess, take it in isolation. I know it's hard to do. I know it's hard to think that, I just let 3 goals in because I crept back post, and what am I doing right now? I'm going to do the same mistakes next game. But realistically, you have to sort of, I guess, see that game really in isolation. Sure, there's some things that we can learn from it, but the previous game isn't going to be a direct replicate. It's not going to be the exact same score. The way that the goals are going to be scored isn't going to be the exact same way. It's going to be different. So you have to embrace that difference and understand that, hey, that's happened. what can I do now? I should be looking forward to this next game because this is actually an opportunity for me to bounce back. This is an opportunity for me to, hey, what can I do differently now?
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's tough because obviously you're going to have natural thoughts that creep into your mind. And I think that's a big thing that a lot of players that are asking these questions tend to want to avoid. They want to know how to stop these thoughts completely. But it's not, I think the biggest thing for me is you don't want to actually stop these thoughts because you can't stop the thoughts. Like people who say that, I never think about negative things when I lose a match, 5-eye, I'm completely in the present. I'm like, I'm completely stoic. They just don't exist. The people are lying if they're saying that. They're always going to have these thoughts, but they might be just better at managing it. They might not be as bad as letting it get to them. I think the biggest thing for me, it kind of is similar to the last question, in that you have things to learn from that game, right? You have things to learn from, and you can almost spin it in the way of your opponent side. You don't have anything to learn from. Yes, they did a lot of positives. They won the game 3-0, for example. But if they made no mistakes, of course, that's an incredible thing. But they don't have anything to learn from and going into the next game. You have things to learn from and you have things to fix. And you know what went wrong personally. You know what you can do better next time. I think maybe taking the confidence in that and trying to focus on that rather than what's going on the pitch. It'll be easier for you to manage. In terms of the actual question, Johnny, was maybe losing a series against someone and then playing them again. Was that kind of the similar lines to the question?
We can expand it to that. For sure.
If you're playing the same team, twice in a row, for example, whether it's a series or in games, I think you have to have a bit of you have to develop a bit of an ego, and not an ego in the sense of like, oh, these guys suck and I am the best. I like to have an ego of like, these guys suck, but I also kind of suck, and it's like you just have to know that everyone is going to make mistakes, including yourself. And what that does is that it allows you to, one, have a little bit of compassion with yourself when you make mistakes and move on from it easier, and also not see the other team as invincible players, because they're still people with 2 hands, 10 fingers, and a controller most of the time, right? It's like they're still the same person playing the same game, right? One of the biggest things one of my previous psychologists said to me is that when you're playing the game, you could be playing it on, sounds stupid, but you can play it on the moon, you could be playing it under the sea, but you're still playing the same game. It's still Rocket League. It's nothing that's different that's happening in the actual game, so it doesn't matter what is going on around you, kind of thing. And that's a similar thing to take away. It doesn't matter who you're playing. They're still people. They're still playing the same game as you, and they're still making the same mistakes as you.
Okay, Florian would like to know, he says, I main ones and I never get tilted in them. I've been playing ones and I got to see one. Don't know why, I just enjoy ones so much, which already puts, I think Florian puts you in maybe a small group of players, because a lot of people struggle to play ones, so that's good for you. But he says, but I play twos with friends and they make me tilt so much. I'm C3/GC1 in twos. I'm 1 or 2 whole ranks higher than my friends. How would I go about trying not to tilt at friends? I guess messing up and just not being at his level, because Rocket League does, it chucks you in the deep end. If you're this rank, GC1, and you're playing with 2 friends 2 ranks lower, the whole other team will be GC1, so you're supposed to lose. He wants to know, how do you avoid raging at the friends? Bushy in the Discord also just wants to overcome raging in general. I asked it, do you guys have any questions? He said, overcoming raging, rolling on the floor laughing emoji. So it seems like that's a general consensus. People want to overcome rage. How do you stop raging, whether it's at your friends or just in general?
It's tricky. I know that there's very, very broad, but I think that you have to embrace it with a mindset that, again, mistakes are going to happen, similar to what Jack said before, but true performance, whether it be at the elite level, whether it be just having fun with friends, requires mental elasticity. And what I mean by that is there has to be a level of seriousness towards what you're doing, but there also has to be a level of silliness and just sort of enjoyment and fun. And I can make mistakes and I can enjoy that. That's okay. Am I going to wake up tomorrow? Yeah, I'm going to wake up tomorrow. Did anything change? Oh, I lost a few MMR. Cool. I'll just jump back in. Right? Just really, I guess, taking, especially, I guess, I'm diving a little bit too deep now, but I can't remember the last time I actually played with some of my friends and actually had a good fun time with them, right? So I think cherishing moments as well is pretty important. Like just cherishing time with your friends, cherishing, even if you lost a game, you were able to sort of play with them and have a bit of fun with them. That might not be there forever, right? So just cherishing those small moments and having fun with that, I think maybe take a little bit of pressure off and just, you can actually just enjoy the moment and enjoy having fun gaming with friends.
Yeah. I never enjoyed playing with people that were below my rank and level because I played the game for fun, but I played the game. My fun from the game was from improving, so I always wanted to play the players that were my level or higher, I guess. I was never bad at raging, I guess, because it's similar to what you said, and something my mum told me actually, as I went pro, before a tournament or after a tournament, she just says, she was like, oh well, it doesn't matter, no one's died, and I was like, oh, quite deep, but it's true. No one's died from me losing this match, or and whatnot, and so it's flipping that kind of that pressure, like you said. It's not actually the end of the world if you lose a game, if you lose some ranked points, if your teammates make mistakes. I've never been bad at raging at team. Of course I have in the past. Everyone has raged at teammates and everyone will in the future, but I've always been pretty good at not doing it because I understand that they are human, I guess, and they make mistakes. It's similar to the last thing. I'm not surprised when my opponents, who are some of the best players in the world, make mistakes because they're not invincible. I'm not surprised when my teammates, who are some of the best in the world, make mistakes because they're not invincible. And then it allows you to be more calm with yourself as well when you make mistakes, because you've already have that opinion on other people when they make mistakes. You're more compassionate, I guess, to them, and that helps you manage it yourself. So yeah, I agree with what you said. It's pretty similar.
Yeah, having fun playing with the boys. I mean, not raging at solo queue teammates is a different thing, a different level of like mental restraint. But not enjoying the games with the lads. That's something I've come to appreciate more and more as I become more and more of an unk. I'm like, wow, this is really something you take for granted when you're younger. That's just every time you hop on and play games. When you're younger, it's just expected. But those opportunities when people are just busier and have more responsibilities when you get older can be so few and far between that when you finally do get a select group online, you're like, right, we're playing Rocket League, we're playing threes. Just trying to enjoy it is way more rewarding. Like having fun with it is so much more rewarding than gaining some MMR, like some numbers on a video game or a nice shiny new rank. It doesn't actually matter. I'm totally with you there, LBP, on the just cherishing the moment kind of thing. I've come to appreciate that a lot more as I've gotten older. I wanted to move on to one other question here from I've lost whose one this is. Let me find it. Okay, wanted to move on to another question from GCXLL. He says he's been stuck playing in lower rank in threes than he's used to, and he can't seem to get out, or he can't seem to get back. Even though he's currently playing in 1800, any advice? So right now he's at 1800, used to being SSL, I'm guessing, because that's right above this. So we're talking very high rating here, but this applies to lots of players. They're in a rank. Probably most of the Rocket League community who play competitive think that they belong at a higher rank, and they identify as their highest rank they've ever been. And whenever they're not in their highest rank of all time, peaking, they're not happy. They're like, when people ask what rank I am, I'm peak GC3, but actually right now I'm GC1 because I've just been, trolling or whatever. Why are people not happy with the rank that they are, and how do they, use that to, actually climb and get higher?
Yeah, absolutely. I think quite a lot of things we've touched on probably directly applies to that as well. I think for those individuals that are grinders and who have that competitive mindset, I think that realistically means that you chase systems, not streaks. You shouldn't be trying to win 10 games in a row. You should be realistically looking at, okay, I won this game. Why did I win this game? What can I take from that? And what can I sort of use that in my sort of personal, armory as a player or as a ranked grinder to sort of take into the next game, right? And I think you shouldn't get obsessed. We've talked about it earlier, but with MMR, just taking it very individualistically. And I think the biggest thing is getting curious or getting used to losing with curiosity. So why did I lose? Was it? I've always said this. Was it on me? Was it on the team? What can I do? And I guess specifically in ranked, I think that there's a lot of tendency to get tilted. And then to just rage queue and go, all right, I just lost this one. I'm going to brute force my way back into the next game. I'm going to R2 game. I'm going to speed around the map, take every boost, go for demos, go for bumps, be an absolute menace just to try and win the next game. But I think having a proper reset and just taking 5 minutes and just relaxing, or maybe even jumping off the computer and then coming back, can definitely positively help with just a complete reset in terms of getting back to okay, what do I need to do? Individually in the next game, how can I sort of help benefit the team, and just you're not going into that sort of really rage brute force mindset. I think is a really important one.
I think a lot of players and people, this is quite a common thing. This happens in all levels of Rocket League. I assume other games and especially sports as well. I assume it just happens in general in life, that when people hit a certain point, they're the highest level they've got to, you don't want to accept, as a competitive person, you don't want to and you don't like to and you don't accept anything lower than that as good anymore, right? Like in RCS, this happens all the time when players, get their first top 8, they're only searching for top 8s. And then when they get their first top 4, they're only searching for top 4s because they've already done it. They've already got it. And that's the same as ranked. It's the exact same. Nothing changes. I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, actually right at the start of this video, with how, Lachlan, you were on a team with, it was Fever, right? When he first came into the team, and he was helping the team learn a lot at the time because he was a little bit more open-minded, because he hadn't reached those levels that those players had already reached. So he's already searching for how to reach that level, whereas for the first time. Whereas when you've already been there and then you drop off to a lower level slightly, I think what a lot of players tend to do in ranked and in RCS and everything is that they search for what they used to be doing. It's the same what was I doing before that I'm just not doing now? What was I, and you become very stuck in your way to into doing things that you used to do that may not work right now for you. Or you're just not doing correctly anymore, and sometimes you just need to maybe open your mind a little bit and act like you're the rank you are for the first time again, because you're now looking to the next kind of level that you're trying to get to with an open mind, with a blank mind, and I think that's more important than looking at the level that you used to be at and going, oh my God, I need to figure out what I used to be doing and replicate it. Because if you're trying to replicate what you used to do, it's actually really it's strangely difficult to do that. And you will snowball and go down and down. So I think that's the only thing I can say, is that try to avoid, because I've had a lot of problems doing this and I've gotten past it now, but you sometimes fall back into it. Try to avoid looking at what you used to do and trying to replicate it, because I think that's what a lot of players do, and it doesn't work for them. All
right, just got a couple more questions here from the Discord to finish off. One of them is more about the coaching, and then we've got another quick one at the end about mental exercises. This is from TechnoGecko. He says, when should coaching advice be offered? How do you know? I'm summarizing this one. Sorry, TechnoGecko, but yeah, when to actually offer coaching and when to let a moment pass. And this can be pro play or just
when to offer coaching to your teammates.
Yeah, well, I'm going to apply this as well to the general ranked player base. If you're queuing up and you're in Discord with some friends and you're taking it seriously, like we talked about, finding the right level of competitiveness, when is it smart to actually mention something coaching related, whether it's an idea about what to change, what to do differently, what you think is going wrong, and when is it better to just let a moment pass and say, it's all good, regain, or just something more general? How do you tell when an actual specific coaching moment is needed?
I think, bit of a tricky one. I think that initially, if it's just sort of happened and you sort of observed it and sort of it's a moment of understanding, maybe that shouldn't have happened, just sort of accepting that, but then seeing if it's repeated. and then seeing if they're doing the same thing again, and it's maybe a little bit annoying, or if it's not something that we should be doing. I guess from a team perspective, sort of how I'm basing my sort of answer. One really good thing that I like to use is what I call a feedback sandwich. So I give one really positive thing that they've been doing well, one thing in the middle, which is where, okay, maybe this might not be, that might be the one thing that they might not be doing correctly, and then finishing off with something positive as well. So you're really layering, I guess, feedback, and that helps to soften the blow, especially if they have that sort of, I guess, individual mindset. They're like, oh, he's having a go at me. He's really, digging into me, but you're actually providing some positive things they're doing as well. I think that's a really good tool to utilize, the feedback sandwich. But yeah, within ranked, it's definitely a bit more tricky because, there might be a few sort of other things that are out of your control.
Yeah, I mean, let's go at the question as if it's like a team, because that's what it sounds like. How do I offer coaching advice to my kind of to a teammate that I play ranked with a lot? That's kind of what we're looking at here, Johnny, right?
Yeah. It's like trying to all improve together as a team. When to be, when to bring something up, when to mention. Because sometimes you do notice something that's gone wrong, and you want to tell your teammates so they can improve, and that you can all collectively improve. But sometimes oversharing or being too specific can lead to doubt or lack of confidence, or just tilt, any of these negative emotions.
I think that with that, it's like you have to understand that every person is very, very different with how they are coached and how coachable they are, and not just like and it's not their fault, and you're not going to actually change the way they like to receive criticism. I think that's actually a very important thing to know. A lot of people, some people like receiving criticism very bluntly, like you're doing this wrong, and there's no sugarcoating. Whereas I would say the majority of people, at least that I've come across, the majority of people don't like it that way, and they like it more as if, as Lachlan described, of having it spun in a majority, like mostly positive way, and then putting in a few negative things that they need to work on. Most people respond to criticism better that way. However, there are a few people that will just want it blunt. I think a lot of people that I've come across that like receiving criticism blunt also just tend to give it out very bluntly as well to other people. And those people, for some reason, they have a mindset of if you don't like receiving criticism bluntly, you're just wrong and you need to change that mindset. That's what I've come across a lot of the time. And that's actually incorrect to do. So first off, don't try and change how your teammates kind of enjoy or want to receive criticism. I think the biggest point that I've always tried to do is you take most of the blame. If you're giving advice out to your team, like whether it's mid-series or whatever, let's say one of your teammates in threes is pushing up too far in the pitch, even if you're not doing it, just say, I'm noticing myself do it a lot of the time as well, but let's try and not do this, So you're making your teammates understand that you're also doing the mistake, and that takes a lot of the kind of doubt that they have when you say things that they're doing wrong, or that you're all doing wrong together. They're like, he's attacking me, or he's secretly thinking that I'm doing terribly, and then they get in their own head. So I think maybe trying to spin it more in a positive way, like Lachlan said, and maybe even taking the majority of the blame yourself, and being more in general about things, how you should be coaching, what do you think we should do in this situation when we're in the corner? I just don't know. What do you think? Should we leave or should we go? And even if you're not being fully honest, even if you know that you shouldn't be going, your teammate is just always going, it might just get them to think about it. And that's sometimes all players need. Yeah,
I like the general method, just saying we instead of you did this, and saying that, even I know that at pro play, it could be a lot better, but this can also apply to higher ranks of Rocket League, because players are, if you're high rank in Rocket League, you're good. You're very good at the game. You played a lot of the game. You know Rocket League very, very well to be high rank. And if you're pro, obviously you're incredibly good at the game. So giving a pro or giving a high rated player an idea, or just a general thing like, I think. That's why a lot of teams, you'll hear comms videos, and it sounds like it's quite surface level, but it's because nobody needs the specific information of
they're already smart enough.
Yeah, you don't need to tell them you were too slow to that ball. You needed to hold boost down there because you got dusted. You don't need to go into detail. You just need to say, guys, let's just play a little bit quicker. Let's just be a bit faster. That's all they need. And they can apply that just to more than that one situation where they messed it up. And it could be helpful as an identity. How we should play faster. We should trust each other more is what a way that you can tell your teammates, let's stop double, triple committing in defense. Let's just trust each other more. It's a way of saying, I wanted to center the ball, but no one is there. Nobody trusted me. Instead of saying that, you just say, let's trust each other more. Let's trust each other's touches. People are, if they're good enough at the game, will be able to apply that in so many more ways than if you honed in on one specific instance where something went wrong.
Absolutely. I think I've always tried to, and I've had a lot of success with actually focusing on what players are good at rather than what they're doing wrong. So highlighting their positives or maybe they're not doing a certain thing that they usually do that they're very good at, right? Just telling them that, like, mate, you're really good at this, and I think that's going to really work against these guys. Let's keep doing that. You're doing well with it. Let's keep doing it. And even if they're not doing it, they'll start doing it. And even if they are doing it, they'll do it more. And they have more confidence in that. And sometimes even actually pointing out someone's positives, it gives them more confidence in general, not just in that one positive play that they're doing really well, that actually sometimes just stops all the negatives that they're doing or makes them do them less, and or makes them just not as bad of negatives as they would be usually. So I think, spinning it really positive, making sure that you're focusing more on what they're doing well and highlighting that and getting them to do that more is actually going to benefit a lot of players more than telling them what they're doing wrong and trying to get them to fix their mistakes. Because like we actually said earlier, your brain naturally attaches onto negative kind of thoughts and emotions a lot longer and a lot more strongly, it feels like, than positive ones. So highlighting the negative ones can sometimes make a difference and not a good one.
All right, last one for you guys here. We've talked about a few of these throughout the episode, but if you had one mental exercise to recommend for people to try out, which one would it be? Maybe which one's helped you the most, Jack, in competition and LBP? Which one have you seen helping your players the most? This one is from ATL1S. If you guys could recommend your favorite one for people to try.
Oh well, okay.
I'll do mine first then, since you guys can't.
Well, you're going to steal mine, but go on.
No, I might not, but I was going to say the only one that I've tried. I don't compete. I just I'm competing at a far lower level / just trying to have some light competition with the lads. But yeah, everybody needs to try slow breathing. It's the obvious one, so I'll get that. I'll just nominate that one. But yeah, I do.
I was going to say that just because everyone is because it's the easiest one to do, and it's the one that probably makes the most difference for how long it takes to get good at it. You know what I mean? Like it makes a big difference. Doesn't take you long to do. Doesn't take you long to get good at it or be confident in that it's making a difference. Other things that that players can learn from, like visualization, I've found extremely useful. Players usually, a lot of people just don't buy into stuff like that, so it's a lot harder to convince yourself that it's actually making a difference. If you're, I'm not actually going to make another one. I'm just going to say the exact same thing. I think it is slow breathing. I think it's
you can agree. You can
I can agree.
That's fine.
I think that's the best one that will just make the biggest difference for the majority of people.
Yeah, I'll combine mine. So I'll add on to yours. Slow breathing, what's commonly used or what's commonly termed Benson's breathing technique, whereby you combine breathing with a visualization. So the best example I have is if you imagine closing your eyes and breathing in, that's the water in an ocean going out to sea. And then when you breathe out, that's the waves coming back and crashing towards you, crashing onto the sea. So combining that is a very nice, vivid visual stimuli. Can just help to really self-regulate the system a lot more in combination with positive self-talk. So, being aware that you're in a position for a reason. I can do this. I will do this. I will do my best. I will give it my all. Just really nice, simple phrases that can really highlight and I guess provide a little bit of self-efficacy towards whatever task you're doing. Can definitely have a big impact for sure.
Yeah, no, I like that one. I didn't even think about that, but that is definitely one that a lot of people will just gain a ton of positives from, just because of like everyone goes to being negative towards themselves, and it's something that I've always said for people to like, not other people to do this, but I've always said that personally when I was ranking up, I would always, every loss was on me. That's what I thought. I wouldn't do it in a purely negative way of like, oh, I'm just terrible. I would never say that to myself. I'd never think of it of myself. But I would always tell myself that every loss was on me, that there was other things, even if I dropped 900 score and my teammate got 200, there's the things I could have just done better, right? But I did it in a way that I wasn't negative. I was still like taking the positives. I was still telling myself that I was really good and stuff like that, and confident. So I think, yeah, doing a mix of both. And people tend to, like, even the people with the mindset of like, oh, I could have done something better, they also naturally gravitate, it feels like, towards like, I'm so bad, I should have done this better. But there's a big difference between the two, you know what I mean? So I like that one. Yeah, positive self-talk. That's a big one.
Absolutely.
That's good. Yeah. I wanted to ask one question I'm just going to ask a question to finish. I said that was the last question from the Discord today, but yeah, the last thing from me on this one is, just a thought of it right now while you guys are talking about, how important do you think the tone of comms is? We're talking about positive, being positive towards yourself, thinking about positive towards teammates. I actually realized this because of, from casting, because I used to be a very like dry, I don't really like when I first got into casting, I was like, I'm not good at this, or people don't want to hear me casting because I'm like the best hype caster, the most emotional caster. But I realized that I could be a lot better at just actually saying things with more of a smile or more of a positive kind of look, and even though people can't see me, like I noticed people enjoyed my casting a lot more. Because instead of saying like, oh yeah, that was a really good play, yeah, really good goal there, really smart, I'd say, yeah, that was a really good play, really goal, yeah, that was, oh man, it's such a smart play. I would just say the same things, literally the same content, but I would be actually happier doing it, and it started to become not even, like initially I had to not fake it, but I would have to remember to do that, and now I don't have to remember to do it, it's just what I do and who I am when I'm casting, and I realized I reverse engineered that into comms when I'm playing in Rocket League with my mates. I was like, wow, I must sound really bored and really unimpressed and really like unenthused with their effort and just how things are going. So I tried to apply this, and I think it's probably made me more fun to play with, I hope. And it's definitely made me less tilted, because I also can relate to a lot of what these questions from the Discord are saying, like how to not get tilted by teammates. I think that just having a positive tone has helped me a lot. But what's your guys' experience with that? How important do you think it is?
I think tone is a massive thing, massive thing. I'm one of the believers that comms is one of the biggest predictors for our performance. If comms are on, then we're on, because it just helps to, I guess, set the foundation for what we want to do in game. If comms are proactive, we're leading, we're following each other, we're creating challenges, we're doing what we want to do. And if you're comming like, I'm back, go you, whereas if you're comming, hey, I'm back, go yourself, you're just adding a little bit more emphasis on it. So it's really manipulatable in terms of different scenarios where you might have a little bit more of an urgency in terms of your tone of voice, where go yourself, play yourself, you got time, versus, you got time, it's very manipulatable. Said like 4 times, but yeah, comms is one of the massive things, especially after a loss. Imagine you've just lost on Neo Tokyo, you're going into game 7, and the first thing you hear from your teammate is, that's all right, boys, come on, we got the next one, versus that's all right, boys, come on, we got the next one, absolute fine game, we did these things right. The tone of voice is completely different. You're saying the same thing, but the tone of voice adds emphasis, creates confidence. A big thing, tone, absolutely.
Yeah, it's like the biggest thing almost, in all honesty. Like, everyone can tell how someone's mood is depending on how they're saying things. Like, people are smarter than you think. Like, everyone can tell that, even if you're not seeing the person. We're just naturally good at that. Everyone is. And yeah, it's the biggest thing. Some of my worst performing teams in RCS will be down to the tone of how we say things to each other. Like, purely you'll just be able to tell that we're performing bad from the tone. And my best performing team that I've ever had, you can listen to our comms and it sounds like we genuinely love playing with each other. And it's like, and even if we lose a game, everyone's taking the blame. Everyone's super energetic. Everyone is talking as if we're not playing a super important series. Like, you're just making jokes, and like, it was, so it's insanely important. Some of my my best regional this season so far is one where I was just trying to, I was taking the blame for everything in the comms, and I was just, trying to keep things light and lighthearted. And it's super important, you just, and I always like to say this, it's like, even if it's not important to performance, it's just important to enjoying yourself in general in life, right? And even if you're not like winning, if you're still enjoying yourself, it's still a decent thing. You're at least getting something out of it, and you'll look back on that and take that a lot more positively than if you just were losing and also hating your time, whilst losing whilst not winning, but still getting good placements. Even if you were just not enjoying it, it's not worth the time. So it's important to performance, and even if it isn't, you're gonna have a better time doing it anyway.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
avoiding negatives. How about like avoiding the it's fine.
That's the worst.
We're still, it's the best 5. Still 3 minutes left. Let's lock in. Oh man, I'm playing so badly today. Like, avoiding like sharing these things.
Yeah.
What on the flip side is that equally important?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds almost obvious to say.
I think the biggest advice that I have, and it's definitely a self-driven thing for players to do, is just record yourself, record your comms.
Everybody's gonna hate that.
Take time to listen. Take your time to listen back to them. The biggest thing that I've always said straight away from when I joined Renegades is that I should be able to close my eyes and just from comms understand what's happening on the field, understand where people are, understand the intention, understand if we're challenging or defending, what are we doing just based on comms. I should be able to close my eyes and paint me the picture, boys. Paint me the picture. And tone just helps do that. So yeah, definitely record your comms, listen to yourself back. It's hard, I know, but you will get something from it. I guarantee it.
Yeah, that's interesting. You can hear in comms if a team's calling well of where they are and how they're doing, even in other languages. Which is actually a really interesting one. I used to coach a team before I was a player. I used to coach a team a little bit. And they were a German team, and I could tell like the things. Obviously, I picked up words of what they were saying. 9. Like more like left and right, but like you can tell where they are on the pitch, like offense or defense, based on the comms. If it's going, and it's interesting. It is really interesting. I think on your actual question, Johnny, of like if the sighing and stuff like that, and if your teammate is going, I'm playing so bad and stuff like that, and if that's really bad, it is if it's overdone. I will say actually though, when people are after a loss or before a tournament, if someone is nervous, that's people naturally assume that as to be a negative emotion. I actually think it's better for your teammates, and if you have a teammate being nervous and stuff like that, to almost let them know that you're nervous with them. And some people respond to that better than being nervous themselves and having everyone around them being like, yeah, this is just another day for me. Like, this is just this is I'm used to it. Because then you feel players can and people can feel very secluded from that, right? They can feel very alone from that because like, oh, everyone, why am I feeling like this and no one else around me is? But like players that are very nervous before a tournament, like I've always said, yeah, me too. Even if I'm not, or even if I'm not as nervous, like, yeah, me too. And that's completely fine. It's like you're just agreeing with some. Even if people are negative, sometimes being slightly negative with them can actually be better than forcing positivity down their throat, kind of thing. It can actually be, I think, sometimes worse for players. Sorry, you can hear people in the background, but yeah,
that's okay.
That's what I have to say about that. But yeah. Good question.
So yeah, you're not going to go and say, oh, you're nervous, but it's okay. I'm not. In fact, I'm so, calm that to cancel out how nervous you are. So don't worry, mate. We're made for each other. Like, it's
exactly.
Too cool
it's
for
a little
school.
bit. Yeah, it's a bit too cool. And it's also like the people that don't even, because that's not like, that is, it's not great, but it's not the worst, right? But it's the worst is like people who are like, Oh, I'm not nervous. Why would I be nervous?
What are you talking about, mate? What are you talking about?
Like that is the worst. And that is the worst. And that's happened. So it's like that's like that's pretty hard to deal with. I think as newer players, people who are naturally nervous, that's quite hard to deal with because it makes you feel very incorrect about how you manage things. And that's not what you want for a series. So yeah, that's what I'll say about that. But yeah, good question. I like that one.
Awesome. Okay, actually, last thing. I'm sorry for all you viewers because we have gone on so much longer than we planned here, but it's been a really interesting conversation. So hope you don't mind.
Sorry
but actually, last topic.
No, it's all good. It's all good, chill.
Yeah, LBP, you had a crazy result last season. I think it would be remiss of us not to talk about this, but yeah, you had a crazy result at Esports World Cup. So you picked up Joria's for that event. You Chiefs went to that event with it was Hunter and Kaka, right?
Hunter, Kaka, Jorias.
Yeah. Hunter, Kaka, and then you needed a third, so you grabbed Jorias, who they quickly dubbed the Great White because of their inability to say Jorias. They called him Jaws. So it sounds like
wait, is that why?
Yeah, that's why they're trying to say Jorias with an Australian accent. Right. It just sounds like Jaws.
That's funny.
Jaws. So they call him the Great White because he's Jaws.
Yeah.
But anyway, what happened there? You guys beat Gentlemates twice. You had a great event. What do you think? Did anything happen? Did you notice anything happening that you thought, we need to try and replicate this? No, obviously the result, we try and replicate that, but mentally and, not just seeing Jarias thrive in that team, but Hunter and Kaka as well, and players who had struggled at other parts of the season just look completely different. Why do you think that happened, and what takeaways do you have for people to learn from that?
I think it's an interesting one. So I think that we went to London previously, and we didn't do really what I think wanted to do in London. We had a really good boot camp in London. We just didn't execute when it came to the actual major. I think that was a major disappointment, knowing that we didn't make Worlds. It was the first Worlds that I missed, so it was a bit of a bummer. So I was like, right, we've got Esports World Cup though. So let's just enjoy this. If this is the last event as a team, let's actually enjoy the process. Let's go out with a bang and just fully enjoy it. And I think, a massive hats off to Jorias because naturally he's a really good team leader. And he was able to just make the experience just an enjoyable one. Because I think he recognized that, previously we had, we didn't do what we wanted to do. So he's like, all right, well, let's just, let's try our best. And he really came forward and put his left foot forward in terms of, bringing in a really positive team environment. And then that made my job really easy just to sort of establish a positive team culture around that. And obviously Kaka and Hunter, both two energetic boys, really over the top in terms of, being a part of the team and having a good team culture and environment in terms of what that looks like come game day. We did skits together. We made content together. We had really good team huddles. Well, I think I stuffed up a team huddle talk, but then it was all just like a massive laugh, and we actually enjoyed the process. And then we just went out and had a field day with Gentlemates. I think we went to Game 7 or Game 5 with SSG, and it was a series where we were pretty keen on winning, but we got real close. But it's like, okay, well that's all right. We've got Gentlemates next. Let's just do it again. Let's just prove everyone wrong that we can actually just do it again. And then we just did it again, right? So. That was just, I think, a last hurrah to our season and just enjoying the experience, enjoying the emotion, just playing. I don't think there was a moment of overthinking. And I know that's a rare thing, especially coming to majors, worlds, events, overthinking, I guess, individual things. The boys just went out free flowing. Just enjoyed the experience. So it was definitely a memorable one, and definitely one of my best events for sure.
It's an underdog mentality. That's kind of what it is, right? It's like a lot of players can benefit from having an underdog mentality. It's a big thing in sports, and naturally everything that's a big thing in sports can be used in gaming as well. So everyone going into ranked, I think, sometimes can benefit from not expecting too much from yourselves. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's what it sounds like the situation was, and you can play a little more freely from that. Like when I first went pro, I never expected too much from myself, and that allowed me to just do what I wanted to, I guess. I don't know, I don't know exactly why that works or how it works, but it definitely does. So any way that you can, it's a lot of the time, a lot of players actually Panda. So my coach, was on the greatest team of all time, or one of the best teams of all time, at least in Rock League, Dignitas. And he said to me that during their kind of stint of winning worlds numerous times and all that, and series online, going on a crazy streak, he would always go into every single series thinking, this is the time. This is the one it ends at. This is the one it ends at. Like,
really?
So, yeah, and that is a form of going into every series viewing yourself as the underdog. Even if you're like definitely not, like you can definitely spin that in the way of him thinking that this is the time where it's just like it's just not going to happen this time, and so you go into a bit more freely and you can play your game. So yeah, there's definitely something to that. It's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to add a real quick tangent. I know we've gone quite a long.
I know we're the kings of tangents.
We love tangents. We love
tangents.
Literally, OCE has always had the underdog mindset. Like, it's always been pivoted into us. I guess it was more especially from EWC. But going to my first major, Sweden 21-22 with CJ and the boys. Literally, I just remember having this phenomenal pre-series talk. I'm a big fan of my pre-series speeches. And it definitely mentioned the word underdog there, but then we came out and beat Endpoint, number 1 EU seed at the time.
CJ talks about that to this day. He talked about it yesterday.
I bet he still does. And then he probably mentions that we 3-0 swept Furia as well. Like,
yeah, Furia, Optic, he talks about those all the time.
Yeah, and that was just the epitome of having an underdog mindset. So yeah, definitely can change the influence in how you act, for sure.
Yeah, I have some experience with this. Like, over the years, I've kind of branded myself very successfully as a bad player with no mechanics. So I've gone the opposite route of a lot of casters in the scene, try and persuade everybody that they're actually quite good at the game and that they're they've got mechanical ability and that people should be impressed at them. I've taken the opposite route from day one. I'm like, no, I'm terrible, and if somebody's losing to me, they should be embarrassed. I think it puts pressure on the opponents when they know that. They're like, oh my goodness, we're losing to this guy who's known as being really bad. So it takes pressure. I have no pressure to, I played the show match at Worlds against First Touch. I had absolutely no pressure, no expectations to do anything at all. And I think that was intentional on my part in the run up to the event.
Yeah. I mean, this happens all the time in ranked. Like, when you're playing, like Alpha Cap is always the one I go to. You play Cap, and he's in front of, he's streaming to 1,000, 2,000 viewers, and he's just playing sound bites on his stream of whenever you make a mistake and stuff or whatnot, and his whole chat is just, and it's just you can't lose this guy because he brands himself as being terrible, making mistakes. It's same as Jesse years ago,
Jesse, very good at this.
Yeah, so it's it's the same thing. But
Alpha he just made a regional, by the way, oldest player ever to make a regional in North America.
They were actually playing really well. I'm not gonna lie, they were playing really well. But it is it's a lot of the time because when they load into RLCS, of similar level players, because Kep is still a high level player. We're going on a massive tangent here, but he's still a high level player.
Very good,
And when you're playing against players that are he's not trying to go pro anymore. When you're playing against players that are similar level to him, but also trying to go pro, the amount of pressure on them to win that series is insane. So it really does speak to the underdog and having a little bit more of a relaxed view of things that it can help. Yeah, guys, that is all today for the first iteration of the Next Rank podcast. We think anyway.
Really? That's it. Okay.
Yeah, it's only an hour and God knows how long. But guys, thank you for watching. LBP, of course, a massive thank you for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure. Do you want to quickly have the stage and shout yourself out where everyone can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So main sort of channels is just Twitter, Coach LBP.
Yep.
Got Instagram as well, which is just Lock Park, which is my name. But they're the main two things. But I just want to say I really enjoyed being on and sort of sharing my experience about these topics. I think it's a really pivotal area that a lot of players can take into account, whether you're just casual grinding, whether you're just looking to become pro or already a pro player. I think we all talked about some pretty key important topics that everyone can take away. Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. Massive thank you once again. His links will be in the description, so make sure to check LBP out on everything. Guys, if you have enjoyed, be sure to drop a like. Check out all of our videos. Let us know in the comments what else you'd like to see in this style of video. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Take care.